Good morning. I'm Connie Zaire. I guess it's afternoon, but I'm still Connie Zaire. Connie Zaire, pastor of Care and Nurture at Loudville Mennonite Church. And I want to welcome you today to join us as we celebrate the life of Merle Yancey, husband, father, brother, uncle, cousin, and friend. Keith and I had been going here for several years, and suddenly in those mailboxes in the back, our mailbox started getting a candy bar, a little candy bar put in there. Well, that was very nice, but it was a candy bar. So we had to sort of fight over whoever got the mail first, got the candy bar. And then soon there were 2 candy bars in there. One time I happened to notice Merle was back there and he looked around and then he snuck these 2 candy bars in there. He didn't see me. Then another time I saw him put the candy bars in, that time he noticed that I saw him, gave me this little sheepish grin. And sometimes I would even find a candy bar in my purse. Then I didn't have to share it. So we have not seen Merle here in church for quite some time, and we have missed him. But we have good memories of him. And good memories are such a blessing when you have lost someone that you love. So I hope that your good memories can sustain you as you deal with this loss and learn how to live without Merle. Will you join me in a call to worship? In the face of death, we worship God, the Creator who gives life, Jesus who died and rose again, and the Spirit who sighs with us in our sorrow. We gather in grief and gratitude to release Merle to God's care, to comfort one another, and to name the hope we have for this life and the life to come.
So Merle loved music. So do I. So we're going to enjoy singing together this morning. We're going to sing 327 in the blue hymnal that's in front of you. 327, Great is Thy Faithfulness. And for this one, I am going to ask you to stand if you are able or comfortable to do that. If you prefer to sit, that's fine with me. Thank you. Stand, please, for Great is Thy Faithfulness. Oh, great is Thy faithfulness, O God my Father. There is no shadow of turning with Thee. Thou changest not, Thy compassions, they fail not. As Thou hast been, Thou forever wilt be. Great is Thy faithfulness, great is Thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, Thy hand hath provided. Great is Thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Summer and winter and springtime and harvest, sun, moon, and stars in their courses above, join with all nature in manifold witness to Thy great faithfulness, mercy, and love. Great is Thy faithfulness, great is Thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. Blessings all mine with 10,000 beside. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning new mercies I see. All I have needed thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Thank you. You may be seated.
Merle G. Yancey, 68, formerly of Trinity Avenue, died peacefully at Carthage Center for Nursing and Rehabilitation Tuesday evening, February 1st, 2022. Merle is survived by his beloved wife, Donna, 3 children, Michael P. Yancey of Lowville, Alyssa N. Yancey of Hawaii, Kenneth G. and Marissa Yancey of Wayne, Pennsylvania, 7 siblings and their spouses, Jerry M. and Nancy Yancey of La Grande, Oregon, Dean R. and Wanda Yancey of Lowville, Dr. Samuel P. Yancey of Croghan, Violet and Michael J. Cowell of Glenfield, Orson P. Yancey of Newmarket, New Hampshire, Annette Halco and her companion Paul Brown of Naumburg, Paula and Nathan Zare of Webster, New York, several aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, and cousins. He is predeceased by his sister, Juanita Rose Yancey, who died in 1962 at the age of 7. Merle was born on March 7, 1953 in Watertown, New York, a son of the late Gerald M. and Lena Leindecker Yancey. He graduated from Lowville Academy in 1971 and Cornell University in 1975. Merle worked in farming and started his combine business with his cousin and partner, forming Yancey Combining in 1981. On July 16, 1983, he married Donna Bills at Lowville Mennonite Church. He worked in his farm business for many years until his retirement in 2018. Merle was an active member of Lowville Mennonite Church, where he worked on the kitchen committee. Years ago, Merle was active in the Boys Club locally and was a past member of BPOE number 1605, Lowville Lodge. Merle loved fishing and visiting with relatives and friends. In his younger years, he enjoyed deer and rabbit hunting, motorcycling, snowmobiling, four-wheeling, and insulating houses. Contributions may be made to Lowville Mennonite Church, 7705 Ridge Road, Lowville, New York, or Beaver Camp, 8884 Buck Point Road, Lowville, New York. Spring burial will be in the Croghan Mennonite Cemetery. Arrangements are with Eisenecker Funeral Home, Lowville.
I'm Associate Pastor Adam Hauser, and let's see here. A little while ago, I reached in my pocket and found this, Yancey Combining and Farms. Yeah. These pens and other things like that often appeared around church, and I think it's not uncommon for me just to find one of those somewhere that has his name on that. Well, our scripture that I'll be reading for the devotional here this morning or this afternoon, sorry, I did the same thing, is Matthew 11, verses 28 through 30. And this is Jesus speaking. Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. There are three ways that I see this passage applying to us today as we gather to remember Merle. We find rest. Merle has found rest. And we are invited to take the yoke of Jesus. These last few years have not been easy, and caring for Merle throughout his health complications has not been an easy thing. The task at times has been a burden, and it has caused weariness. Also, when a loved one dies, there are many tasks that need to take place with that. And of course, grief can feel like a burden, a weight that we can carry emotionally or even physically. Jesus calls us to find rest in him. And I start with this point because Jesus is with us in this space here today. And he is calling us to rest. We are burdened, and he brings rest for our souls. So let's allow his gentle spirit of rest to surround us in this time here. Secondly, Merle is now at rest. And especially again in these last few years, Merle was weary and burdened with health issues. And now he is experiencing rest and peace with Jesus. But this is not just a physical rest, it is a spiritual and emotional one. And this rest or dwelling with Jesus as one takes on the yoke or way of Jesus does not just come at death, but it is one that comes all throughout life. I think that Merle had taken on the way of Jesus in his life. And we can see that in different ways. And I personally felt Merle's gentleness and care. We had a name for each of our 4 children while my wife, Nicole, was pregnant with them. And it was sort of a pet name, I guess you could say, until they were born, and we gave them their full name. And for Milo, our second born, who just turned 5 this past weekend, we called him Baby Sweet Pea. And apparently at some point at church, I shared that we were anticipating the birth of Baby Sweet Pea. And Merle really caught on to that. He would ask me or Nicole how she was doing with Baby Sweet Pea. And even after Milo was born, Merle still would refer to him as Baby Sweet Pea. And he would always ask how our family was doing or how we were doing too. I did feel genuinely cared for by Merle. And I remember, too, the little treats that would appear in our church mailbox. Him checking in with our family like that was one way that he carried out the yoke of Jesus in his life. And again, now he is fully joined with Jesus. As in life he took on the way of Jesus and showed that way to others, now in death he is alive in the way and life of Christ. Thirdly, we all are invited to take on the yoke of Jesus in our lives too. Now, in the Jewish rabbinic tradition that Jesus was a part of, a disciple of a particular rabbi took on the yoke or the way of the rabbi. And that is, they took on the teachings or the ways or the likeness of that person. And this included 4 main things. They memorized his words, they adopted his interpretation of Scripture, they imitated his ministry model, and they multiplied his teaching in disciples of their own. Now, we certainly seek to follow Jesus in all of those ways. But doesn't that seem hard a lot of the time to do so? There are so many commands. How do we interpret Scripture when different passages or books of the Bible may seem contradictory on some things? And what is the best ministry model in my context, and how to apply that to making disciples of my own? Over the years, I think perhaps we have somehow complicated all of those things. The growth and expansion of the Christian church was never meant to become an institution that does any of those things on its own. Christianity is about following Jesus, about being like Jesus. And the writings that we have in the New Testament were meant to multiply disciples of Jesus, not to make disciples of Paul or Peter or John or any of the others that wrote there. Jesus said that his yoke, or his teachings, his ways, were easy, and that his burden is light. Perhaps in some ways we've made following Jesus harder than it needs to be. The biggest thing in the way of Jesus is love. In our actions and decisions, we are showing love for God and love for others. And I think we show love for God in loving and valuing everything that he created. Merle often shared on Sunday mornings and asked for prayer for those that were suffering or experiencing loss in different ways. He was expressing love and care for others, even if we admittedly didn't always know how to respond to his prayer requests. But I can also remember Merle sharing about how the weather or other conditions were affecting crops or affecting farmers. And certainly that was Merle's life work, to harvest what the earth produced. He was connected in that way. He was connected to the earth and to God's creation. And I think that connection to the earth was another way of loving all things that God created. When we take on the yoke of Jesus, it is not a heavy or cumbersome burden, but rather it frees us from the burdens of this world and directs us, leads us in the way of Jesus. And that way, the way of Jesus, brings life and brings rest for our souls, both now in our present lives and, as Merle is now experiencing, even in the life that we find after death.
The next song the family has selected is actually incorrect in your bulletin. It is actually 545 in the blue hymnal. 545, Be Thou My Vision. Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart, not be all else to me save Thank you.
My name's Keith Zayer, senior pastor here, Lowville Mennonite Church. Saying senior pastor makes me sound old, but I'm only 2.5 years younger than Merle, so this is a contemporary of mine. Starting to get used to that a little more, but it's never easy, is it? John chapter 14, verses 1 through 3. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may be also. This is something that was on Merle's mind a lot in his later years. I was fortunate to be able to talk to him. I think it was barely 2 weeks ago, Donna, whenever that was. Donna called me, and we had a 3-way conversation with Merle. His first question, what do you think heaven's going to be like? How do you answer that? Heaven is not like the house you live in, where you go scope it out before you buy it, you take a look at it, you get an inspector, and then you can decide yes or no on that house. We have no idea what heaven's going to be like, but Merle really had an interest and a belief that it was going to be good. And it's almost as if since his mother passed away, he thought about it more. I was thinking I had only been at Lowville Mennonite Church here for a short time when Gerald passed away, and I think his was the first memorial service that I participated in here. Several years later, it was Lena, and now today it's Merle. And I've always appreciated the family and the relatives and the friends. We don't need to make a habit of meeting like this, but if we do, it'll be a blessing to see you and be with you. And Merle would often call, as we were not able to meet for almost over a year here in this congregation. We chose not to, but he would call me, wondering when we're going to meet again. When are we going to have a fellowship dinner again? And then he would talk about his mom in heaven. And then he'd get emotional. And he'd start to cry. And Merle was an emotional guy. He really was. Now, some of us men think that's a sign of weakness. I think when a man with the ability that a man has to make a difference in the world can be emotional, that's an additional strength. It was Merle who shared during sharing time on a Sunday morning that he had heard about this virus, that people were dying from that in another country, and he wanted us to pray for them. And he started to cry about that. He knew about the coronavirus long before the rest of us did. He was watching and paying attention. I got to see his emotion in a very strong way when one Sunday morning in Sunday school class, Donna was stricken. And the EMTs needed to come and tend to her, and he was pretty much a wreck. I don't know if you were even aware of that, but just very emotional about that. The fact that we had Merle as long as we did is a bit of a medical miracle. His body had been ripped into and basically reconstructed. And he would often tell me the details of what happened, and I thought, how can you still be here after all of that? But he was, and he had strength, and he had creativity, and he had this ability to care for people. And I too would find the trinkets, the pens, and the flashlights with the instructions of how to use them properly from Merle. Merle loved to eat. It was suggested by someone in the congregation, you need to take Merle out for lunch. So I invited him to McDonald's, and we were sitting there, and we agreed on what sandwich he'd like to have. How about a soda, Merle? You want that? No. Water's fine. French fries? No. So the waiter brought our food to the table, and Merle looked. Can I have a soda? Could I get one of those? Okay, so we did that. Are those my fries? Well, they are now. I never got the chance to take him out again. I wish I had. I would have ordered double fries and made sure we had enough. And similar to what the funeral home has here today with the little lifesavers there that you can take, which is kind of a neat idea when you think about it. We used to do that on Sunday morning here in church. Merle would grab a whole handful. And he didn't hoard them either. He ate them all during the service, right on that bench, right over there, because the cleaning lady one day asked me, who is leaving candy wrappers all over this bench up front? And it's kind of funny. I would have thought, can't the guy even pick up his own candy wrappers? But how much are we going to miss that and wish that it could happen again? Merle had a rally at the end of his life, and that's when I talked to him. I had heard that things were very serious, and the doctors really didn't expect him to survive much longer. But as often happens, when someone is in that situation, they pick it up for a little bit. And that's when I was able to talk to Merle and Donna together. And I've thought about that since then. I'm sure there's a physiological explanation for why that happens, although doctors and nurses say they just notice it. They don't really know why. I am now speculating as a minister of the gospel that maybe this is God's way of preparing you for the final journey and giving you a chance to get your act together and say your last words and ask your last questions, because time is short after that. I do know that God related to Merle in a very unique way. And so I have faith that this is what God gave Merle at the end of his life. Because I was surprised when I got the call that he had passed on, because he had sounded so good just a couple days earlier. And what a blessing that is how it was. And it's already been relayed to me how peaceful he looked after that while we were waiting for people to come and take away the body. So thank you, God, for relating to Merle in the way that you did, and thank you to Merle for showing us what true faith can be like. And I offer these words as a final part of this meditation. The Spirit and the bride say, come, and let everyone who hears say, come, and let everyone who is thirsty come, and let anyone who wishes take the water of life as a gift. That's what Merle did. Great example for us all.
This song is found in the red hymnal that's in front of you, number 576. If you just want to follow along with the words, I think after Keith's message, it will really resonate with you. It is well with my soul, or when peace like a river. I would like for you to sing with me on the final chorus. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. Though Satan should buffet, though trials should come, let this blessed assurance control, that Christ hath regarded my helpless estate, and hath shed his own blood for my soul. It is well my sin, oh, the bliss of this glorious thought. My sin not in part, but the whole, is nailed to his cross, and I bear it no more. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, oh my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. And Lord, haste the day when praise shall recite. The clouds may go back as a scroll. The trump shall resound, and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. Sing with me. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul.
I think we're set. What I'm about to read was written by Donna, and she said that she'd rather not come up here because, of course, her love for Merle and trying to bear that. So I was volunteered by my wife. Merle was strongly influenced by his growing up years in Lewis County. One of 9 children, his life with his siblings on their Tug Hill dairy and 9 cousins on their neighboring Tug Hill dairy farm was formative and unforgettable. Merle's, quote, family, unquote, of 18 children growing up together on Yancey Road was a huge playground of opportunities for kids. Working on go-karts, motorcycles, snowmobiles, souping them up to go faster. Merle valued his relationships with his Yancey Road siblings and cousins all of his life. Merle showed his caring for the people he loved by focusing on their physical needs. Are you warm enough? Have you had enough to eat? He would provide the essentials: flashlights, gloves, food, firewood. Vehicles with antifreeze, windshield wiper fluid, check the tire pressure, snow. He would shovel off the roofs, bank the house, snow blow the sidewalks, up and down the street. Merle had a strong connection with the people of Lewis County, particularly with farmers and his many relatives. When disaster befell, he would be called to action. A hay barn fire at Ralph Rogi's, flooded cattle barns on the River Road, and a microburst destroying a dairy farm on the number 3 road. Merle would go to help, usually in the worst of weather. One of his often used expressions being, when it rains, it pours. Old habits die hard, and in recent years, Merle would dream of help being needed and call us to action. He was so convincing that one night I drove him to Cowell's Farm Market at 2 a.m. in the morning to help with an imaginary house fire. Merle also enjoyed the world outside of Lewis County during various times in his life. He had strong memories of his college experiences at Cornell. He was inspired and influenced by his teachers, enjoyed his ag fraternity, and traveled across the country, researching and writing a paper on the agriculture of each state. As a farmer, Merle was able to take several trips with his partner, Herb, to agricultural production factories in the U.S. and Europe to view the latest advances in harvesting equipment. During his life, Merle took trips to such places as New York City, the Jersey Shore, the Berkshires, Kingston, New York, and Carmel, New York, seeing his in-laws and their families. When he was 50, he went to Florida and to Schaghticoke, New York, to see his college friend. Merle enjoyed being with people. He loved and cared about the people of Lowell Mennonite Church. He enjoyed helping in the children's and adult Sunday school program and with the kitchen committee for fellowship meals. He enjoyed riding snowmobiles, four-wheelers, and motorcycles with his cousins and friends. Gatherings of all kinds were his real favorites. Holiday dinners, community dinners, camp parties, family reunions, hunting parties, business dinners. Note that being with people often included food as a bonus. Merle enjoyed working with people. He enjoyed working with Carl Zare and friends making maple syrup. He enjoyed working with many people in the farm business, farming connections and relationships with farmers, stone picking crews, bankers, equipment operators, employees, farm equipment operators, and so on. Merle had a way of blending the business of farm work with some social interaction. Deliver a load of round bales, shoot the breeze, truck some manure, have a talk on the phone. Donna's students at school would look out the front windows and see Merle driving a tractor through town, an oversized analog call phone glued to his ear. Merle liked the camaraderie of being with people. Merle went with the flow of life, the cycles of the seasons, his days and weeks. He knew what had to be done in each one. He was pretty tough, mentally, and pragmatic in handling the challenges of life, farming, and his body's decline. He liked to laugh and made humorous remarks that people seemed to enjoy. He was curious and innovative, never a complainer about his lot in life, as compared to the suffering of others. Merle was pretty fun to be with, including in these last years of disability. His disabilities brought new awarenesses to Merle. He was able to feel things in a more emotional way than he ever had, and could express more love and empathy to friends and family. He started to feel emotions much more deeply, and that showed up in him. He could cry with joy. He could cry with sympathy for the suffering of others. He could cry just because his heart was touched by a beautiful moment or a sight in God's beautiful world, like the pure, white, snowy landscape. Merle began to say, "I love you," and give hugs, which was not in his old way of doing things, having believed that actions speak louder than words in providing for one's family. Also, Merle became more able to express gratitude. Merle had had a very full life, and he recognized that he had been able to do everything that he wanted to do. He was grateful. He was thankful that he had been able to be accepted in marriage and have a family with children. He was thankful for the things he had been able to do when he was strong. Fun activities like fishing, riding motorcycles, snowmobiles, and four-wheelers, and challenging himself to build a farm business. Merle had always had feelings for God and always loved Lowell Mennonite Church, but he became much more spiritual. He came up with the idea that heaven might be like a fourth dimension, which made sense with the kind of science brain he had. Merle talked more about heaven and spiritual things and was very touched by thinking about deep spiritual truths and watching Zoom church services. Merle was also inspiring in his positive attitude. Of course, Merle mourned the loss of his abilities. Merle was nostalgic for his able-bodied activities, wishing he could be able and strong again, but he was remarkably upbeat and positive still. One day, Merle said he would like to ride a horse because that could give him mobility. Another time, he wanted to be picked up and carried to the car so he could see the world. He loved going on road trips in 2019 and 2020. Merle was a child of God. God helped him evolve in new and different ways and handle the struggles he had to face. Now you can rest, dear Merle. Father, brother, uncle, and friend, you prayed. You prayed to fall asleep and wake up in heaven. And so it was. It is written in Ephesians 4:23 and 24. And be renewed in the spirit of your mind, that you put on the new man, which was created according to God, in true righteousness and holiness. It's been said that Christianity is not a religion as you might think of other worldly religions. It is a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I think Merle showed that to us. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you, Nathan, for reading that, Donna for writing it. We're going to give you opportunity now to share any memories or thoughts you might have. We'd ask you to come up to this microphone. We are live streaming the services. There are people watching. Thank you, online audience, for joining us. And your speaking will be going down in eternity on YouTube. Just be aware of that, all right? But we do want to give you opportunity to share a few words if you'd like to take that time. Just come right up here. Thank you.
Donna, I just want to thank you on behalf of the family of your love and devotion to Merle. 17 years ago, I remember Jill, our youngest, is a baby. She was born and we got the news of the surgery having the problem. And from then on, you've had many times, many visits to the hospital and just many difficult days. But through that, you found a way to bring joy to him. And your family, thank you for sticking by him all these years.
There are two reasons I can think of why there's not a rush to the microphone this morning. One is that this is the Yancey family, and we all know it's going to take a long time once you all get started. But I know that you have many memories, and you will talk about those privately. The other is I wouldn't have had to talk at all today because everything I said, Donna said later. So I think she has said it all about Merle. I will give just a couple of seconds if there's anybody that wants to say something else. Come on out, Mike.
First off, I just want to say that I really appreciate everyone who took the time to come here today. I know that it means a lot to Merle, and it means a lot to the rest of us here. You know, this alone is a reflection of how he was beloved by the community. That alone, I mean, that speaks volumes. I guess if I had to say anything about Merle, I would talk about what he taught me in life. Now, Merle, he came from a hardworking family, as many of you here can relate to. But he was no stranger to tragedies in his life. He experienced the loss of his sister, the loss of their farm on the Yancey Road. And what I've seen throughout his life was that he simply kept his nose to the grindstone and he kept pushing on, he soldiered on. You know, when I think about what he taught me about hard work, I think about the years growing up working on the fields throughout Lewis County, picking stone, stacking hay bales. Now, Merle's work was not easy, and he was no stranger to tragedy in that as well. He chose a field of work that he was at the whims of nature and fate, but he never resented, you know. He was an unassuming man. He was not 10 foot tall or bulletproof, but he took on life that way. Whether it was broken bones, whether it was different injuries that he experienced in his life, or even too much rain or little rain, you know. He always liked to talk about life, but he never let it bring him down too much. He kept his nose to the grindstone. I know that his life, it was a long journey and it wasn't always rainbows. You know, at the same time, he always had faith in his fellow man and woman. He always had great love, not only for his family, but his friends, and even those that he had never met overseas in other countries. He was a man who was unassuming in appearance, but big in heart. And I know that despite the slings and arrows that his body took through the years on his long journey, now he has finally reached peace, and he can rest at the end of this long road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I heard a comment by a classmate of Merle's before this service started. Merle was a really smart guy. Well, let me tell you something. Merle often was telling me how smart his kids were. And he says, I don't know. They're just doing things I never imagined. So, does anybody else want to have a word here shortly? Yeah, come on up.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to second, what Mike said. Thank you so much for everyone who came. I think Dad touched a lot of lives, people, that, Mom and I may not even realize. Certainly it was very special to, a lot of people in the community, and it means a lot that, everyone's come, to spend this time with us. as Mike said, Dad was a very unassuming man. He was not someone to have a big kind of emotional conversation with us, in regards to life's lessons and, preparing us for life's challenges. He was really one to lead by example. As Mom said, our cares were always taken care of, whether we knew about them or not. And I joke that, a lot of what I've accomplished, I can lay at Dad's feet. People asked, why were you so motivated? And I said, because anything I do from here on out is easier than working for my dad picking stones. So he really paved the way for me to live the life I have, and I'm enormously grateful for that. Thank you.
Ken, the first time I met you was at Beaver Camp. You had driven a motorcycle that could go really fast, and you had a girl with you. And when you took off and motored down the road to go back home, Merle just kind of shook his head. Hope he's okay. Hope he's going to be all right. You going to let all the men talk in the family, or is there going to be another opportunity? Yeah, come on up.
I've never spoken in front of a group, believe it or not. Believe it or not, I can yak one-on-one, but otherwise I'm very shy. I wanted to say that Merle was generous beyond a fault. We would have a Christmas drawing where we'd save money when we were younger and didn't have that much money between the families, and you would just draw somebody's name. But Merle was always buying gifts for every single person, every family. And he was almost too generous. He even sometimes jeopardized their financial situation because he was generous to a fault, the way he'd give away money and stuff and help anybody out. Thank you.
Hello, I don't speak very much. I'd just like to say that before I even met the Yancey family, Merle took me in. I worked on his crops and stuff with him, and never knew Annette, didn't know any of the family. Merle was the first one to take me in. I got to know Violet because Merle did land down there. And then over the years, I don't know how it ever happened, but Annette came into my life, been with her 30 years, and I love this family. I do. Thank you.
Well, I just have a little two stories to say about Merle, my brother-in-law, married to Dean. And I'm going to read for you. Merle is an honest man, with me very polite. We could talk about anything and for a time. Funny guy, not complicate, sarcastic, oh yes. And boy, did I like to embarrass him. When passed by him on the street, while he was in a pickup with a load of hay or not, a few times I threw him a kiss. And by the way, it was allowed from my husband and Donna had her permission. And he got so embarrassed. But whenever he was, I'd kiss him, desk floor, kiss for him. And he smiled each time and just, he didn't say much, but I had a kick out of it. One other story is my airport experience. It was summer, and Donna asked me if I could give Merle a ride to Watertown Airport, and she would receive him at his destination. I gladly took him. We got there early, so he had time to relax before the flight. But when we had to pass through the metal detector, I passed all right, because I was going to stay him in the room, so I passed it all right. And when Merle passed, it went off, and the whole crew was on him. You know, he was, just what's going on, and everybody was around him. And it happened about 3 times. And every time they go there, they would remove one item of clothes from him. Every possible clothes item Merle had, they were removing from him. And he looked at me like, and now, I say, just do what the men are telling you. And so he had. The machine still was against him. Then the man had to check Merle manually. And Merle was there upset with a very few clothes on him. And still the machine beeped. And again, the man had to go through his pockets, and finally they found the jackknife. That was just nothing, but he used to cut hay with that. You know, the strings of hay, and he forgot on the bottom of his pocket. Oh, the poor man. Merle turned to me and said, I thought that man was getting fresh with me. And if so, he would have it. I was already laughing with the situation, but that line Merle said, and Merle being so proper, that was hilarious. So that was my story.
Sorry, Don, I had to take well blame for it. Merle used to come on the job, couldn't button his pants. He liked to eat. And he always said, Don, stop washing my pants in the dryer, I wouldn't have to pick and button my pants. So he always blamed it on her putting his clothes in the dryer and being too small. But we all know the reason why, because he ate candy and he ate whatever he wanted to eat. And that's why his pants were too tight, wasn't it? And that was Merle, always. Yep, she did it again, put him in the dryer. Yeah, that was Merle. That's all I remember.
On that note, I think the only time I've heard Dad yell in anger in the last few years was when he came to Philadelphia, and I hear him yell out, and I go in the other room, and he's in a fierce fight with our dog for a hamburger.
Thank you all for your sharing and for those great stories. And there is a time downstairs for the family to continue, and there will be many more stories. So thank you for being here. We're going to have another couple of songs and a benediction, and then there is a meal that is just for the family afterward. Normally we'd feed everybody, and we'd love to do that. This is just a different time. But I'm glad we could gather today. Thank you all for being here.
The final song for today is number 504 in the red hymnal that's in front of you. 504, the Mennonite Hymnal. Very familiar song to us. I got to thinking as these stories are going on, I think if I were Merle, this song I'd be singing to all of you right now. Oh, 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 oh. God be with you till we meet again. By his counsels guide, uphold you. With his sheep securely fold you. God be with you till we meet again. God be with you till we meet again. Neath his wings protecting heart. his arms unfailing round you. God be with you till we meet again. God be with you till we meet again. Keep love's banner floating o'er you. Smite death's threatening weight before you. God be with you till we meet again. Thank you.
It's a bit of a joke in the congregation that regardless of the technology we have for sound, the pastor's still going to bring a cheap old cassette player and play something. This is one of the greatest pieces of music ever written, and Merle loved it and wanted it, played at his funeral, and when you think about it, what more appropriate song would there be? We're not going to make you sing this one, but we will invite you to listen. It is often a tradition to stand during this song, and because this is the last thing we're going to do, if you're able to, we will invite you to do that. I will offer a benediction now. We'll play the song, and then we'll turn the service over to the funeral home after that. Would you stand, please, for the benediction? The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.
For
peace, everyone.